Hello everyone, Bandit here, and it's Christmas because we have a brand new and final trailer for Tears of the Kingdom to analyze, so let's get right into it. Our opening shot is of the clouds far above Hyrule, showcasing a sunrise over the Sky Islands, or Skyrule as I like to call them. From the other angles, we can even see more cube-like zonai structures that might just be platforms, but also might have more secrets than initially meets the eye. The next shot again showcases Skyrule, this time with a Choo-Choo fighting off against one of the constructs. This is interesting because Choo-Choos originate from down in Hyrule, or so one would think. If they're present up in Skyrule, perhaps this is the final proof that many of these Sky Islands have indeed risen from the ground below. The next shot is a closer one of the constructs, apparently cutting down a tree. As we saw in the gameplay reveal, some of the constructs are not initially hostile towards Link. Perhaps they're building shelters for themselves, or are trying to achieve some sort of common goal that we have yet to uncover. The next shot is of Link heroically diving towards the surface. We can once again see many Sky Islands in the background, including the large V-shaped building which we can now see close up. It appears to be a massive, multi-layered structure that just screams dungeon to me. As Link falls, we see Hyrule and the logo of the game appear in front of us while the music takes a classic spin. The next shot kicks off a series of shots that all serve to showcase Hyrule's many changes, most of which are due to fallen debris from the world above, as we can see in this shot. We also have a better view at this new, not Sheikah Tower structure thing that apparently is located right beside Kakariko Village, according to this giant zonai ruin that has a hole in it that we see later on. The next shot showcases Hateno Village, but for some reason everyone is really into mushrooms. The fashion shop has a mushroom dress, there's a mushroom tower, mushroom tree looking things, and even mushroom hats being worn by the various citizens. Intriguing, to say the least, but not anything that I can speak to right now. Next we have a shot of tents going up in Hyrule Castletown, which does not appear to have been repaired very much at all following its initial destruction 100 years prior to the events of Breath of the Wild. However, it's possible that these tents are here because of the efforts to repair the Castletown, and due to things we can see in previous trailers and this one, I believe we'll be able to assist with the repairs all throughout Hyrule. Next we have a shot of Link climbing above Kakariko Village, along with the opposite, closer angle to the Zonai Donut or Zonut structure resting on top of some hills. There is a Zonai shrine located below as well. There are scaffoldings spread out through the hills surrounding the village, but it's unclear as to what their purpose is. I can only assume the Sheikah are attempting to research the fallen ruins. Next we have a swooping shot of Link running through some Zonai ruins towards a great tornado in the sky. This tornado appears to be the same one showcased in the game's art, which may be located above the Hebra Mountains. If this is the area that Link is exploring with the Rito individual later on, that would make sense. Next we have a shot of the Gerudo Desert, with something rumbling underneath the ground. An overhead shot reveals new zonai structures present in the desert, and the following shot reveals a giant, previously unseen zonai structure actually rising from the ground. Now, a structure rising from underneath the Gerudo Desert would imply to many fans of the series a return to the Arbiter's Grounds, or perhaps the Spirit Temple from Ocarina of Time. But the fact that it is clearly a zonai structure and not a Gerudo structure does hurt this concept, although at this point anything is possible. Either way, it will most likely serve to be another dungeon though. In the next shot, we see many falling pieces of Skyrule, most of which appear to glow with the zonai magic that Link should be able to use his recall ability on. Ganondorf's theme plays on the piano in the background as we look at the risen castle, and we see Sheikah individuals looking at the falling structures with much concern. To the left, we can see what appears to be a house or a building that's in the process of being built. Again, something I believe Link will be able to help with in the game, and also a reason to see bolts in construction, I hope. The next shot is one of my favorite, because clearly it's a shot of Ganondorf, whose hair is now red and glowing with malice. This is obviously after the events happen within the castle, as proven by Ganondorf standing outside somewhere, looking at the giant blood moon. We can see flowers around where he's standing, which could be a balcony of Hyrule Castle, or perhaps somewhere on the ground immediately outside. Ganondorf basks in the glow of the blood moon, and just as he turns around, we cut to black. And moments later, we see the familiar shot of Link desperately trying to save Zelda from falling, which he actually fails at. However, as Zelda falls, we see a glow begin to happen around her body. This is the exact same kind of glow that happens to Link whenever he's being warped by Zelda in Breath of the Wild, which to me means that Zelda is being warped here, but the questions are, by who? And to where? Allegedly, her powers are gone at this point. Could this be the work of someone else who also has the light powers of Hylia, and who is calling Zelda to their side? The next shot shows Link traversing Gerudo Desert, which looks quite a bit different now on account of all the sinkholes present. We can't see down into any of these sinkholes from this angle, but these could hide enemies inside them, or perhaps they are holes that Link can fall through to enter the underground structures that we see in the previous trailer. With all the ruined pillars sticking out around the ground immediately surrounding the sinkholes though, one might might be able to conclude that the sinkholes lead into whatever structure used to be here. And since these pillars are clearly not zonai, perhaps this is the Arbiter's grounds. In the background, we can see a familiar dust storm in Gerudo Desert, as well as new zonai structures and one of the ground tattoos sprawled out along the side of the Gerudo Highlands. In the next shot, we see Link running in familiar armor, which proves that at least some armor sets are making a reappearance, as well as the Lizal shield. Link is running towards a huge underground structure with lava falling on either side and probably flowing underneath his feet as well. From what we know in Breath of the Wild, this has to be the interior of Death Mountain. However, it's also possible that it is just underneath Death Mountain, or is a new underground area entirely, since we've been showcased that in previous trailers. I would assume this structure is either a city for Link to explore or a dungeon. The next shot showcases multiple flying zonai ships that look like warships. Because of this and a few other things in the trailer, I believe the zonai are forming an army to battle against the forces of Ganondorf, which Link will join, perhaps even explaining his change in attire. We also see the storming tornado in the background. Perhaps Link will need the assistance of these warships in order to enter the tornado. Next, we see Link do some sort of low gravity jump into a floating water bubble, which he, get this, can swim inside of without surfacing. Clearly, Link will be able to swim in water in this game, at least that's what this means to me. The water bubbles also contain zonai construction pieces and assumedly are how Link will traverse to the other side of this zonai structure. Next, we have a very fast shot of Link descending quickly, dodging zonai lasers on the way down. It is entirely unclear what he is descending into, but we can probably assume it is the underground. He pops open a new wingsuit, which appears to be Rito in origin. This probably helps with assisting Link in slow falling and having greater glide maneuvers. Then we see Link inside a dome-like flying island, potentially one we see later in the trailer, pushing a giant lever facing a giant bubblegum dispenser that dispenses giant orbs, which resemble the Sheikah orbs that Link needed to solve many puzzles in the first game. Perhaps these will be useful in solving this giant structure. Next, we see Link gliding through a zonai structure that very heavily resembles the labyrinths from Breath of the Wild. There's not much to go off of here though, so moving on. Next, we see Link twirling a new spear going into battle on horseback against some moblins and bokoblins. But what's even more is that we see Hylians fighting alongside him. Perhaps Link can recruit people for his own army in Tears of the Kingdom, which we'll get to later. Next, we see Link ascending on a familiar looking Sheikah elevator, which is actually kind of refreshing to see at this point. However, the biggest giveaway is the fact that he is holding the Nintendo Switch, the Sheikah slate-like device in his hand. The official art of Zelda shows her holding it, so this is a bit contradictory, although it can be assumed that Link picks it up after she disappears after falling. Link also appears to have some sort of cable spooled on his chest that is connected to the Sheikah switch, supposedly powering it on. The Sheikah text behind Link reads transport. The next shot is an incredible facial reveal of either a zonai or the zonai that we've been seeing on the murals a couple trailers ago. For those of you who have seen the leaked art book, you know what this individual's name is, but I will not say it here for those who have not. Either way though, this person is a very, very big deal, and I think the one leading the zonai armies against Ganondorf. We can see individuals standing behind him, which may be other members of the zonai army. Link turns around on horseback in the next shot, but nothing more. In the next shot, a giant zonai construct awakens from the wall in a black sky environment, which may be underground, and something tells me this isn't going to be a very friendly meeting for Link. Next, we have a very peculiar shot of Link in the throne room with it sparkling. See, this is either a flashback, which isn't very likely, or it's time travel. Because if you'll recall, the throne room is kind of occupied at the moment, and not to mention destroyed due to the events at the end of Breath of the Wild. But if Link is shown already having his new zonai shield, then how is he here, seeing the throne room like this? Maybe all the sparkles everywhere are implying something magical going on. Like I said, either a flashback or time travel. After the brief cut to black, we are finally shown Zelda after her rapid descent. She's standing in new zonai attire in front of a zonai shrine of sorts. A voice begins speaking to her, saying, "Zelda, we rely on your knight and that legendary sword he carries," as it shows Link's normal hand, not zonai hand, grasping the Master Sword. The voice continues saying, "Our last line of defense will be Link," which again proves to me that Link is indeed joining the forces of the zonai against Ganondorf. Next, we are shown Zelda facing the zonai figure we saw before, whose name I still can't say. Let's just call him Richard. We see Richard's clothing, which has familiar Zonai shapes and ornaments as he places his hand on Zelda's shoulder. A close-up of Zelda's face reveals more of her new attire and her lack of memory of Link, at least at first, since it takes her a hot second to remember him, which implies so many things. Time travel, a new body, resurrection, you name it, but something happened to make her forget. She's wearing a Magatama as a necklace, which will be important for a visual later on. Next, we see Link looking cool as hell, flying on a new Zonai glider across the Sky Islands, with many being visible in the background. Hyrule below also showcases new malice-filled areas, which seem to contrast the Zonai swirl structures. Next up, we see Link fighting some constructs with a shield sword, which is probably the coolest thing I've ever seen, which he no doubt created out of the use of his fuse ability. Next, we see Link flying above eastern Hyrule towards a giant spinning sphere island, which I think could be the structure he's shown inside of earlier in the trailer. Perhaps it's like a giant divine beast or dungeon of sorts that he has to solve in order to find another Magatama, perhaps. Next, we see Link facing off against some kind of flaming ball monster thing that shoots out at him as what appears to be two Goron children watch. Perhaps this is some sort of trial that the Gorons have come up with, or perhaps it's just for sport. Link's armor and the Goron lanterns implies that this area is in fact Death Mountain. Then we see Link and who appears to be Tulin, Tiba's son, flying upwards in the Sky Islands. They bounce off of a giant trampoline that, if I didn't know any better, feels pretty Rito in origin. This, along with some other reveals later on, implies that Link will be able to take companions along with him in his journeys, some of which are champion descendants. As Link flies upward, we can also see the Zonai warships in the background, meaning these things are moving around in real time. Next, we see what I believe to be one of many side quests in the rebuilding of Hyrule, the assistance of moving a family whose wagon had been broken. Link can repair all sorts of things with the Ultra Hand, so why not use it to assist those in need? Next, we'll see Link utilize Recall in combat against an Octorok, which is finally going to be an easy way to get rid of those pesky enemies. Also, if you'll notice, when Link activates Recall, time freezes while he's making his choice. Now, whether or not this is an upgrade to Recall, it is no doubt going to be very helpful in combat. Next, we see Link attach his arm to a rocket. A Zonai rocket, actually, in order to explore space, the final frontier. Or, okay, maybe just Skyrule. Interestingly enough, it's possible that Link is on Eventide Island here, although I'm not entirely sure about that. It does appear to be some sort of island off of the east coast of Hyrule, though, which is very interesting. Bokoblins can be seen building structures and being upset like they do. Then we see Link doing the low gravity jumps once again across floating Zonai platforms. This is very interesting. Either gravity gets lighter the higher he goes, or it's lessened on some of the Sky Islands, or there's an updraft, or this is one of Link's new abilities we haven't fully seen yet. In the background, we see orbs of something approaching one of the islands. It is entirely unclear what these are, but they have little green orbs inside them, so that's cool. Then we see Link in an intense-looking conflict with a construct, riding alongside him in a minecart above lava. Link is able to defeat it, and in the background we can see what looks like the underground area from the previous trailer, meaning this lava area must be underground. Again, perhaps underneath Death Mountain. Next is one of my favorite shots of any trailer ever, and it is Neon Zelda Evangelion essentially, because just as the Bokoblins are riding atop a stone talus, Link has literally constructed a giant block fighting machine mecha anime thing with a little arm with which to mess up his enemies. This just makes me so happy, and I could rattle on, but we're just gonna move on. Next, we see Link riding horseback, firing an arrow which has a ruby attached to it, giving it explosive firepower. I hope it's a very powerful arrow because that's an expensive attachment. And as the camera pans over to Link's face, we can see horns atop his head. Now, I'm assuming these aren't growths, but are rather a new headpiece that we can collect in the game, and who knows what effects it will grant Link. Next, we see a familiar Bokoblin camp with a Zonai structure that Link activates. The structure, which appears to be a simple Zonai wheel with lasers attached, activates and begins firing lasers in all directions, eliminating everything around it. And imagine putting one of these on a giant construct machine and just all the possibilities. Game of the year, people. Game of the year. Anyway, next up we see Link and the Rito allegedly inside the tornado while an absolutely bone-chillingly terrifying giant monster lunges for them from beneath, and this giant monster may actually be what was responsible for the large tornado, and I cannot wait to face it in combat and kill it. Link's Zonai armor is also glowing as well as the Rito's gear, which could be due to the proximity to the monster, perhaps. Next we see the familiar Malice explosion from Ganondorf, and then an immediate cut to Zelda, standing outside in Skyrule holding the Magatama that she was previously wearing as a necklace. She says, "I know why I am here. It's something only I can do," which implies a connection to Hylia, as that is pretty much Zelda's entire impact on the franchise as a whole. The Magatama she holds has the same symbol as Link's recall, as well as the same glowing color. To me, this means that either Zelda is leaving these Magatamas around for Link to find, or she also has the power of recall in this relic. Next, we see Ganondorf exploding the malice out of his chest, and said malice traveling skyward, opening a portal that looks similar to the portals the dragons would travel into in Breath of the Wild. I have no doubt that this portal is what breaks the separation between Skyrule and Hyrule and is the catalyst for everything. We then see Ganondorf's monsters becoming superpowered by the super malice flying throughout Hyrule, including our first look at the new Lynels with their new, even more intimidating horns. Ganondorf's voice can again be heard saying, "Do not look away. You witness a king's revival and the birth of his new world," as it shows the malice somehow tainting the otherwise all-powerful Master Sword and spreading to Link's arm. Then we get to see the best shot of the entire trailer, and that is, ladies and gents, Rehydrated Ganondorf, looking absolutely amazing, if I might add, with a nose as mighty as ever. He stares directly into the camera as he lets loose a mighty yell, with the gem on his forehead glowing as his power surges from the light of the blood moon. And let me just take one more moment to comment on how amazing this moment feels for Zelda fans from all generations to finally see Ganondorf again. For the first time since Twilight Princess, which was nearly 20 years ago. Let that sink in. Link runs from a new underground monster that looks quite terrifying and lives in Skyrule, then flies downward with the Rito child who tells him, "Okay, let's go." Then we see who looks to be Zelda, but going through some kind of transformation into a Zonai, with her skin darkening and her ears expanding but still retaining her familiar soft eyes and her Magatama necklace, which is now glowing as she appears to charge up a power in her hand. It's unclear if this power that she was charging up is this huge bolt of light energy that shoots out across these Moldugas, but it definitely seems like it. Also, the Moldugas getting shot back in the air is actually really funny. Then we see Riju, grown since we last saw her, performing a sword dance and summoning lightning just like her ancestor Urbosa before her, and just looking amazing and intimidating in general. Then we see Link standing with all sorts of people, donning all sorts of gear, even a bucket. Could this be some sort of ragtag army that Link can form and even gear up? An unfamiliar voice says, "But you are not alone," while Link fights alongside Sidon against a fancy-looking construct, which implies that Link will be able to take champions alongside him and perhaps even form his own armies, which opens up so many possibilities. Then we see Link looking at something unknown and a close-up of Riju and Sidon and Tiba charging against an enemy. And I'd like to point out that Sidon appears to have a Magatama on his hand, which I don't think he had previously, which could imply new powers for him perhaps? Link is then shown running towards a terrifying Gleeok with eyes made of malice and fire on top of all its heads. This is one fight I cannot wait to experience. Zelda's voice can be heard saying, "Link, you are our final hope," as she grasps the Master Sword, which goes against the whole time travel speculation because there's no reason she would hold the Master Sword unless it was because it's damaged now. If you watched my previous video, you'll know that I believe Recall is perhaps one of the biggest new abilities in the game because it's what Link is using when repairing the Master Sword, and also apparently what Zelda can use as well. So perhaps Zelda assists with Link recalling the blade. After the logo plays, we have one final shot of Zelda, sitting alone atop an unknown area in Skyrule, saying, "Link, you must find me." And the last thing we hear is Zelda's lullaby. Theories upon theories must be made, but for now, that is the end of my analysis. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like on the video as that greatly helps get the video spread out online. And the past few trailer analyses I've uploaded have all hit the trending page, so let's see if we can do it again. And if you're excited for the game, subscribe if you haven't already, because all I can say is, here we go. I look forward to seeing you in the next one, and thank you so very much for watching. If I missed anything, please let me know what you found in the comments below. That's all I've got for this one, so this is Bandit signing out. Peace!